A quick note before we begin. This podcast dives into real, often raw conversations about life's most profound moments, from a labor's beginning to life's end and all the complexity in between. Some stories may be emotionally challenging or deeply moving. Please listen with care and know that you are not alone. Welcome to the Atoosa podcast. I'm your host, Atoosa Benji. Welcome to the Atoosa podcast. My guest today is Natalie Arambula, also known as Naya. So I'll be using both, but I love Natalie. It's so beautiful. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy you came. I know it's far away, and I really appreciate you making the drive to be here live. It's good to be in your presence. And I was in your presence a few months ago when you and I took a very powerful workshop. We're both birth workers, and you were sitting in front of me. And as soon as you opened your mouth, I was like, oh, this woman is special. So we got to talking, and your story is incredible on so many levels. And Mama Atoosa is Conversations with a Midwife. So we talk a lot about life and resilience and courage. And for many of us, how that translated into birthwork or translated into our motherhood journey or our sisterhood journey or whatever it is that we're doing, but propelled by our lived experience of what we've seen. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
Well,
I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you. It's my honor. Tell me a little bit about your early years.
Yeah, well, I was born in Santa Barbara, and when I was 2 years old, my family moved to Mexico after my father passed away. And so the first few years of my life, I was raised in Mexico, which I'm so grateful for because I got to experience the imprint of community woven into the culture that surrounded us, that is rooted in family, that is rooted in sharing, that is rooted in food and music. So for me, having the experience of my first years relatively in Mexico were such a gift. And then when I was around 6.5, we moved back to California, and I've been in Carpinteria near Santa Barbara since then, and been traveling the world for the past 9 years.
And you are a birth doula and a postpartum doula and traditional birth keeper, which we'll talk about what all of that means and where they are interwoven. And your parents are both of Mexican heritage?
Yeah, they're both from Jalisco.
They're from Jalisco. So your mother took you back to Jalisco.
Yeah, we went
after
back
your father passed away. So they had met in Jalisco, or they had met here?
They met in Carpinteria. Both my 4 grandparents migrated to Carp, and so my parents met there.
It's just amazing how we end up where we end up and then go back and come back and all our different journeys. You are a powerful presence. Your energy is just very solid. I can feel you from the side of the room, as I did on that day too. And I know that we're all drawn to birthwork in different ways for different reasons. And I always say that birthwork will call you in its own magical way. And often if you don't listen, it just keeps calling you until you respond, because some of us were just put on this earth to be birth workers. And I feel that very deeply from you. I didn't know your whole story. You had shared with me some of the early trauma that had happened. I didn't know until later all of the ways that wove together, but it makes so much sense to me. So with your permission, I would love to hold space for that story if you're willing to share it.
Yeah, with pleasure. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity to share my story and the rippling impact of how it's marked my life and how it's really inspired the work that I do and what I'm fully devoting myself to every day. So when I was 1.5 years, my house got broken into by a few men, young men. and my father was murdered while I was sleeping in my crib. And this is the reason my mother moved us back to Mexico, was to start life over again. So you can imagine just the trauma and the grief that impacted not only myself and my brother and my mom, but our whole family and our whole community. And moving to Mexico was truly a gift because we were embraced. We were wrapped in this blanket of love by our family there. And so this is the foundation that I stand on, and that I've continued to stand on in the moments of darkness when all of that rises to the surface to be seen again. And my relationship to this experience is that it really just unmasked a deeper wound that had already been present beyond my father's lifetime. It had been generational, it was cultural, it was systematic. And these unsustainable systems and structures that we embody that are eventually going to collapse as we see them collapsing right now all over the place, individually and in the world. And so when I moved back to the United States, I felt the fragmentation for the first time. I felt, okay, I no longer feel safe anymore. And so I went through, my childhood and teenage years experiencing a lot of anxiety and depression, despite when I was in my home, and when I was in places where I felt safe, I was in my joy. I was, the goofy one and was very chatty and passionate, but stepping outside of my house, something happened and I didn't understand what was going on. And it was so confusing to me because those closest to me saw my light, but I was drowning in the grief that had not been processed fully within myself. When I came back, I remember everyone in my family, especially in my dad's side, couldn't really look at me. They couldn't fully embrace me. And I was confused by just the silence that surrounded me with my family. And I have a lot of compassion for that now, but at that time I was really confused. And I know that they were doing their best of how do we talk to a child? Okay. And when I was a child, I already felt very embodied. I felt very present, but this tragedy wasn't long ago. 10 years goes by like this. 5 years goes by, in a blink of an eye. So they had not yet met that within themselves. And it created separation. It created silence. It created,
A void.
A void. Thank you. And for me, I was just confused. I needed direction. I needed clarity, even if it was going to be painful, but that came in time. And my mother, she had experienced a lot of mystic stories after the passing of my father, and hearing those stories was like hearing fairy tales that were true. That gave me hope, and that strengthened my connection to life and to spirit and to my faith. And
an example of a mystic story.
Yes. So, okay, my mom has a connection with the Divine Mother, with La Virgen de Guadalupe. And in Ventura, there was this angel store that my mom would go to, and there was this painter that had his paintings there who was blind. And people from all over the world would come and touch and put, their hands over these paintings, and they would feel the energy. Wow. And somebody there who was clairvoyant and was able to see beyond the physical reality, told my mom, and she went up to my mom and told her, the Virgin Mary is going to be, La Virgen de Guadalupe is going to be delivering some roses to you in these days. And my mom, she received the message, but she didn't really think anything of it. She was like, okay. And there was many things that happened in that store. And a couple days later, my mom went to my grandparents' house, which is where we were living at, right after my dad had passed away. And there was roses left at the doorstep. And my mom knew exactly who those were from. And her sister had dropped them off. But my mom was clear that it was the spirit of the Divine Mother that had inspired her sister to drop off those roses. And yeah, another story, in that same store, someone had come up to my mom and was just pouring in these messages of just witnessing the spirit of my father being taken from sentient beings, from angels. And I feel like it's because of the prayer that was continuously devoted to my father week after week. And even though his spirit was stuck here and it was hard to leave, and he was visiting us, and my mom shares stories of us being able to see him and calling out to him and crying when he would leave. But this experience, when his spirit left, he was taken. And my mom just felt this overwhelming sense of peace and liberation within her that she'd never felt before. And she just wished everybody could feel this. So listening to many of these stories to me just opened my heart in a way that allowed me to have the capacity to hold the grief, but hold hope and trust in the purpose of this experience, despite the tragedy that it will always be. But trust in the divine plan that was guiding us and protecting us through this whole experience. And so naturally, I had always gravitated towards mothers and children because I wanted to be the support to other families that I knew my mom had received in certain times, and that I also wanted her to receive. And with children, my experience of the care and love and tenderness that I received from my family that was life-saving for me later on, the presence that I received, I recognized, like, children will remember this. And even if they don't, it's a seed that's planted. Mm-hmm. And that will be with them always.
I envision your family just embracing you in a giant rebozo. Like just coming in back to Mexico and being just held by that love. It's so...
Yeah.
It's so palpable.
Yes. Yeah. And now it's like I might not see them for years, but there's a deep love and bond that connects us
to your
maternal
family. So she went back to be with her parents or with her in-laws?
With our extended family. Most of our family stayed in here. Yeah. Everyone in CARP, but our extended family in Mexico. Yeah. To me, when I was around 20, I just turned 20. I had this experience of coming face to face with my shadow, with my darkness, and finally claiming it, finally being like, oh, this is a part of me, but it is not who I am. And this is a cry. This is a voice that deserves space to be heard. And I, at that time, had plans to leave the country for an indefinite amount of time. It wasn't my first time leaving the country alone, but I was on this mission of holding space for something beyond me and being fully devoted to the path of following my heart. And that was something my mom had always encouraged. And so on this journey, it led me into traveling to many different countries all over the world and meeting myself over and over and over again through the encounters that I was having, through the relationships and life experiences that were midwifing I was midwifing myself, and I was being midwifed by my life to come back into life and to alchemize this experience. And so as soon as I returned, I was clear. I was like, I'm going to do a doula program. And it was so clear. I found the most extensive program that I could find at that time and wanted to devote my whole life just to focusing on the doula program, which was in Canada. And it was a 4-month intensive, like 8-hour, 4 days a week, 8-hour days, 4 days a week. Wow. And it was like a little buffet of so many modalities: anatomy, nutrition, partner counseling, and so many other threads. Yeah. And as soon as I had finished it, I was like, okay, life, what is the next invitation? What's next? What now? Yeah. And I received the invitation to go down to Ecuador. And I was like, okay, yes, I recognize that this is my first step. And now it's time to deepen through the path that calls to me, which is more of the traditional midwifery lineage of accompanying families and birth. And so I went to Ecuador and supported my first birth and was initiated into, birth. And it felt like home to me. It was this space, this ceremonial space of presence that felt familiar to me. And I knew that I was home when I was supporting my first birth.
Why Ecuador?
Well, I had friends that I had met on this journey, and they were going to be there teaching yoga, and they invited me to come. And I did. And I met a midwife and formed a special connection with Ecuador.
Isn't it incredible that when we take, first of all, we're called to the next indicated journey, and I teach doulas to become doulas, so I train doulas. But what I always tell my doula students, because they come in wide-eyed and just excited to start this journey, and I always tell them, I say, I'm going to introduce you, like you said, to different ways of looking at birth, to different modalities, to different ways of using your hands and using your words and using your space. But I don't actually know if you're going to become a doula. And sometimes doulas will leave. By the time they have left my workshop, they are already telling the world they are doulas and starting their births. I taught a doula workshop this weekend. We finished Monday night. This morning, one of those girls texted me and she said, I have my first client.
Wow.
So for some people, it's just that, like they're in and they're called and they're starting. For other people, it opens a whole way of looking at the world that organizes them internally differently to be like, the birth stuff, it's not for me, but the postpartum stuff, that's where I need to be. Or, I don't really think I want to be a birth doula. But the psychology part of it, that is calling to me. Or they leave and they become midwives. I wrote someone a letter of reference for medical school. She left and she said, I want to be a doctor because I want to practice holistically with what I learned. So we just don't know. It's like we present a buffet, like you said. And some people will try a little bit of everything, and some people go for the salad bar, and some people go for the dessert, and it's all okay. It's all okay. But birth is so... My cousin took a doula training just because she wanted to take a doula training and be, she just wanted to hang out for a few days with me. And when she left, she's like, everyone should take a doula training. She said, this is not about birth and helping people have babies. This is life work.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Which I love that she said. So for you, it took you directly to a cohort teaching yoga in Ecuador, where you went to your first birth in a hospital?
It was in a birth house.
In a birth house. What's a birth house?
It was like a birth center, but it was a house.
My dream. My dream. Yeah. Every time we go by a beautiful house with, you know, a certain kind of look or a garden or a feel, as soon as we go by, my kids are like, that's mom's birth center. Every house that feels like that, I'm like, that's my birth center. I feel it as my birth center.
You know, it's like if you're not going to birth in your house, then you birth in another house. You know, because it was a place where people who might not have a clean home or space in their home will then go to this house that is still cozy and has all the
everything you need. And how was that first experience?
It was powerful. It was really powerful. I was invited by this midwife, who's also an obstetrician, to accompany her clients. So I had met them briefly and they were so open. They're like, yes, come. And
sorry, I'm stuck for a second.
Yeah.
She was a midwife and an obstetrician.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What double threat, triple threat,
Yeah.
quadruple threat, right?
Yeah.
That is, so she's got the heart of a midwife and the knowledge and the holisticness of a midwife, and also has the skills of when you need the interventions. And so she doesn't have to transfer. She's her own OB that she transfers to.
She is, and she had like other doctors that she
collaborated with.
In collaboration with, yeah.
Love.
Yes, she is amazing. We have a great friendship and she fully trusted me. And to me, this was really important because there was no hierarchy in the space. She honored my role and she honored her role. So when I came in, it was just the mother. The father was working because he's providing for the family and he wasn't able to make it. And it was a beautiful birth that ended in an emergency. And in that, she was having a hemorrhage and another doctor had to come into this space. And I remember hovering over her head behind this bed and just recognizing my purpose here is to hold space and to look into her eyes and to breathe and to be in prayer and to anchor in peace despite what's happening. No matter what's happening, it's not my job to understand, to know, to fix, but to be this anchor of I got you, you're safe, you're loved, you're held. And that was so powerful to me because it's so easy to fall into that fear and to feel, go in the spiral of that. And it takes a ferocity to be grounded and to trust in life that everything's going to work out no matter what happens. And I remember she was losing consciousness and I was assisting the baby for the baby to latch onto her breast. Yeah. And in that moment, again, being like, I'm just here holding, but the baby knows what to do and her body knows what to do. And just this moment of just anchoring in trust of like, anything can happen, but I'm going to hold this with you. And yeah, we had to transfer the mother to the hospital and the baby was left there. And I felt like that was why I was called to this birth, because when I was there, I was holding the baby and I was talking to the baby and I was just letting him know that, he was safe and that he's loved and that his mother was going to be back and she's well. And just recognizing the imprint of the first moments of life. And that was my first birth. And then I took a taxi home and I was like,
what just happened?
What happened? And it's this portal of life that opens and then it's like, okay, now what?
It's incredible. And the importance and the blessing that baby had, that you told that baby that mom is going to come back. Mom is going to be okay. that you're not alone, that you're safe, that I'm holding you. Because the babies feel the void. And I'm not a psychologist or a therapist. It's not my intention to be that for you or for anyone else. But I can imagine that in the work, this deep work that we do, there are vibrations of healing for ourselves. There are vibrations of re-traumatization for ourselves too. But when we think about at 1.5 waking up and daddy was no longer there, that tremendous void, and not the knowledge that, you know, he's gone, but he'll be back. That when a parent is taken away, whether they are taken away permanently, which I think you and I share that in our childhood in different ways. I don't want to compare my story to yours, but losing parents that it's sudden, 1 second they're there and 1 second they're not, the incredible loss that child feels, whether they're awake or they're present for it, is immense. It's immense. And the body of a newborn doesn't know if mom has died or if mom just stepped out to go take a shower or if mom is going to be back. That baby doesn't know. So to have you already put that baby at an advantage psychologically, that I'm going to be okay, that I am held. So how important it is for us to talk to our babies. I always talk to the babies, especially when mom and dad are not in the room. If they're, you know, if that is the situation, because they wonder where each other are. And the same thing, I talk to the moms too, because sometimes when baby is taken to NICU, the mother's body doesn't know that. Her mind might know that, but the body thinks the baby's dead. And everything in the body shuts down psychologically. So the importance of that communication could have been life-changing for that child, can be life-changing for that child, and incredibly healing for you, whether you knew it at that moment or you didn't. I don't know. Did you know it?
I didn't connect those dots. No, but I've had experiences of taking care of children and their spirit communicating to me at the end of our time together. Like I came to be a mirror for you. Yeah. What you just shared right now about the babies also compensating, like trying to fill in the void that's missing, reminds me of this powerful somatic exercise that I did with 5 women. Maybe there was 5 or 6 of us, and we rotated. One of us represented the infant, the other the mother, another the partner or the father, and then 2 layers of support and a witness. And I began as the infant, just being held from the mother. And initially, I asked the woman, I was like, how do you want me positioned so you can be comfortable? And she's like, you're the infant. Don't worry about that. I'm your mother. And that instantly gave me this feedback of like, oh, how
interesting. Yeah.
And also, this mirroring of my relationship to my mother and what we've been working through of like, I'm not her mother.
Nope.
And I'm here to just be the child. And I remember so that was the first one where it was like, okay, I'm already trying to fill in a void. I'm already trying to take care of the mother. I'm already worrying about somebody else's needs as a newborn infant. The father comes in, the partner, and I soften a little bit. I notice in my body these subtleties that, okay, there's a softening. And then the first layer of support comes in. So that could be a family member or a doula. And then the father, the partner supported, mother softens even more. And the baby, when I was the infant, I felt this like deepening, just like, I'm held. I'm like anchored. And then another layer of support comes in. So somebody supporting the doula or maybe the midwife or another family member. And then I was just like in the ethers. I was just like in this expanding state of presence, and the whole family was held. And I can only imagine how that ripples on. Like, what if we lived in a world that saw the value of that, the lifelong emotional, physical, communal value and imprint that leaves, where it's so, it's part of our biology. It's part of our essence and nature as human beings to take care of one another. Even when a family member does pass away, it's like, okay, who's stepping in? Who's filling in those roles? And I'm still now like getting those imprints, when I was just with an uncle and he expressed this affection towards me that was so sweet and fatherly. And I was like, oh, that was the first time I've ever felt that before. That's so beautiful. Now I know what that feels like.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that you're being held, your experience of going back to Mexico, do you think you would have had a different experience if you went to stay with your father's family versus your mother's family?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Well, there was a lot that happened in relationship to my dad's family it was the brothers, the siblings, my grandparents that lost their child.
Right.
And there was blaming towards my mother. So that was really hard for her. I don't think there would have been a reality where I would have stayed with them because they didn't have the capacity to support us. They didn't have the tools, the awareness, the knowledge, the wisdom, the insight to even know how to do that for themselves.
Right. They were probably surviving themselves.
Yeah.
Do you remember the loss in your body and how it felt as a young child? Or did you know that something bad happened? What did it feel like in your body?
I remember feeling it later on, just when I was in the presence of a father or was watching a father and their daughter, feeling like I wanted to hide or like I didn't belong, just like wanting to make myself really small. That's how it manifested. I feel like the anxiety, this like, I'm not home within myself, which I know so many people feel through their own life experience. And so much of this journey that I now feel at home within myself, but it's been like this journey of reclaiming what that even means for me, despite moving and traveling and not having a home ground. But what does home mean? What does home feel like within myself? What would it feel like if I am whole within myself? Because I am whole within myself.
Yeah. And we're all called to this birthwork journey and for different ways and different reasons. A lot of us are avid advocates for women and for fighting a system that has taken birth away from women, mothers, and grandmothers, and midwives. Do you think that the undercurrent of misogyny culturally and even further out is what propelled you into this work?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many layers that I can dive into with that question. It is a reclamation of recognizing our power and the wonder of what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a birthing person, what it is to be cyclical, and what it means to radically choose a life that is in alignment with our truth, with our nature. And so for me, I received the gift of freedom. I didn't have a machista father that could control my decisions. My mother trusted me, and after my father had passed away, she had this freedom. And based on her faith and trust in life, she trusted mine. And it allowed me to start traveling when I was 15, to start learning about myself, learning through life in a different way. So it absolutely is a part of my path. And it's a path that I'm discovering with myself, if that makes sense. I didn't have examples of what that looked like, or it feels like a reclamation.
It's so interesting. You talked about your father's side of the family not having space or ability or bandwidth or tools to talk about what had happened. And I feel like there's the trauma that happens, which is murder in this case, and loss. And then there's the other layer of trauma by adults who are so deeply traumatized themselves that they have no idea how to hold space for the kid. So the void is then further exacerbated by the fact that no one's talking about it. So there is this deep well in the middle of the room that all of us are living with, that's inside of us, but no one has the words. And I remember, I don't know if you resonate with this, but this feeling of like pity, or let's avoid it, or, you know, or so, I mean, I remember looking around at adults and feeling like, are you the adult or am I the adult? Kind of like what you talked about as the infant, like how do you want me to be for you? You know? Because I found that most adults do not have the tools necessary to be adults. You know?
Yeah.
So the trauma that children go through when these catastrophes happen is furthered by the adults who are doing their best. God bless them. I'm not pointing fingers. You know, no one should ever go through these things. But when people do, I wish someone would hold the children and tell them that I see how hard this is. And I don't think it's done enough. Don't know if you had that experience.
Yeah. Well, when you just shared what you did, it makes me think of like these adults are like their inner child is also wounded. And so when they see this child, it's like their inner child is also crying for a different reason, for a different tragedy or grief. And it's like, we're not honoring these rites of passage. We're not, and this is like where the connection of birth and death, of like the rite of passage of birth and the rite of passage of death and the rite of passage within our lives that mark us, that mark time, and that initiate us to become adults, to become the full embodiment of who we are, and to heal. And so, I wish I had that. I wish I had more of that. And I had to leave California. I had to leave high school. I had to finish it in a different way. I had to do these things for myself. And I needed to be away from my family. I needed different examples to do that.
To navigate it differently. And isn't that such a microcosm of the birth room? Because when you think about, I love analogies. So let me try to tell you what is going on in my mind. You have the birthing person that's going through this tremendous event that's been going on for minutes or hours or days or weeks. We don't know what labor is going to look like, right? From beginning to end. And then you have all these other people who, if they are not in touch with their own trauma, are trying to manage what could be perceived as a traumatic event without have looked at some of the things that brought them there to begin with. And then when you talk about the layers of toxic trauma which happens within our system, which if we're talking within the, let's say, a Western medical system, nursing school or medical school, and then just being in an institution, in a hospital where you're actually surrounded by a medical corporate model or a med law model, and you are trying to do your job while you are in this traumatic event, having never connected to your own trauma, knowing you have the trauma, but never in relation to now what you're going to be exposed to every day, can then actually cause the whole room to break down.
Yeah.
Whereas, and Naya and I met in Naoli Viniver's workshop. Naoli is a midwife who practices in Mexico, and she is a traditional midwife. She's a storyteller. She's an incredible educator and practitioner and woman and space holder. Her workshop was life-changing for me. I know you and I talked about that. Like I left there a different person. And I was thinking, I was telling you also that not one PowerPoint, not one handout, not one, manual. It was all through purely lived experience that she gave to us, and we learned. It's incredible. So do you think that those of us that get called to birth work, especially if what I call go through the mafia route of out of hospital doula or midwifery work or traditional work in a birth house in Ecuador, do you think that that's a real opportunity for us where we're called to the work because there's an internal reorganization that needs to happen before we're able to hold space for the birthing person in their full capacity?
Yeah, I fully believe that there's a responsibility. There's a responsibility to look at ourselves. There's a responsibility to when we're on this journey, to be constantly asking ourselves and be observing ourselves in, when we're in the birthing space. And if something's coming up, observe, don't bring it in now, but observe what's arising. Take mental note, take notes of that, and come back to that later and hold space for that and move through that. Because the portal of birth, it's like the portal of life, and it's a place where we can also receive gifts for ourselves. Just holding presence and having this mirror of, okay, what is arising? Can I just anchor into my breath and hold presence? And later on create a safe space to be able to process that through my body and heal and move through that. So then I can expand as well my capacity of holding space for life. And I feel like the radical revolution is in creating networks of care for one another, because as birth keepers and birth guardians and midwives and doulas, we're in constant service to others. And so for me in this path, I've taken it step by step without rushing, because my instinct is to want to be where I want to be in that moment. But I know that it's a journey to get there. And I know that this is my life work. And so what spaces are we creating to take care of each other, to bathing each other in herbs and massage each other and offer tea and food and create spaces that feed us so we can continue to feed others? And this is the exciting part of this work of networking and meeting each other. It's like, okay, how are we going to make this sustainable? Because in my doula school, there were some guest speakers, and I remember meeting women who were burnt out, who were losing their hair. Yeah. And it's like, we will burn out because we don't know how to listen to our bodies. If things come up and if it's normal that things come up, but if we're not ever giving that space and overriding it, we're going to get sick. Yeah. And
the body will shut down.
The body will speak. Yeah.
Oh, it'll present the bill. Yeah. It will. And I always say the body, I think there's a book now, The Body Keeps the Score. Yeah. I think they stole that from me, because I always used to say that the body presents the bill and presents the bill when you least expect it. They're like, oh, you don't have to pay. But then like 4 years later, they're like, hey, remember, here's your bill and here's a little interest, and it's due by the end of the day. So it doesn't, once it calls out, it doesn't stop. I actually this last doula training, I had a nurse in the class because we do a lot of the doula training that I do. Yeah, it's great to learn how to do a hip squeeze. It's great to know your scope of practice as a doula. It's great to know childbirth education. All those things are important. But I think a big part of training birth workers is just that. Is we are typically, and if you're a birth worker and you're not, forgive me, I'm going to stigmatize for a second. We are typically givers. We are typically healers. We are typically people pleasers. And we sometimes we often say yes when we should be saying no, or should have said no 8 yeses ago. And I think with that huge capacity of this vessel that we have, we are big vessels. Most of us as birth workers, we are big vessels. But sometimes I think we overextend the capacity of the vessel. And so at the end of the training, one of the women was an L&D nurse, and she was taking a doula training. And when we had our closing circle, she said, a lot of the stuff I knew already. She said, I knew how the body works and how the cervix works and what the hormones do and all of that. And thank you for all the stuff you trained me to be a doula. But what I got most out of this was when you talked about how to take care of ourselves, how to fill our own cup back up, how to say no when it's the wrong client for us, how to stop when we're tired, what to eat at a birth, what the ritual of taking birth energy off of our bodies when we come back into our homes to serve our families or serve ourselves. And I thought it was so powerful because the average medical worker in this country goes through a rigorous program where sometimes it's not very nice. People have mental breakdowns in nursing schools and medical schools just trying to get through. Then they leave and typically go into a system that just continues that. And there is now we have a little more understanding of vicarious trauma and healing the health worker. But you go to work, you see everything you see in a 12-hour shift, and then you go home, and then you come back and you see it again, and you go home and you come back and you see it again. And we burn out, we lose hair, our thyroids go out, our divorce rates are through the roof. So why does it have to be that way when we're the vessel that's holding space for birth and families?
We're repeating the same thing
over and over and over again. So there has to be, like you said, a radical revolution in birth, but in birth work. And an understanding that if I am in the birth room with you, you and I have had trauma in our lives because we're human beings. Big T trauma, little T trauma, we've had trauma because if you signed up to be here, we're going to get some, right? But if I can meet you there and we both know that we're actually in it for that person, so that when that person is going through it, we don't need to save them from themselves. We don't need to give advice to them. We don't need to have fear of that journey of birth, of the crying out, and what Natalie talks about, like the burning or the heating up of everything they don't need anymore that is getting processed in this process. Then all of our nervous systems can align at a much lower frequency than this client having their baby, maybe or maybe not being traumatized, but then each of us going home and being like, oh, that kind of sucked. Let me get a couple hours of sleep and go back and do it again. It's not designed to do that. I think birth workers my kids always laugh because I always say women belong in circles together. I love a circle of women. And Natalie's training actually solidified that for me. As much as I can, I put women in circles because it's where we heal. It's where we grow. It's where we're able to learn. And we're missing. We're missing it. Yeah. Are you working now in Northern California mostly, or California Central Coast?
Yeah, I'm here in Santa Barbara right now, and I'm working here, and I'm working online as well. Yeah.
As a doula. How do you doula online? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, the online support is me offering my services and my knowledge and my wisdom to families in the gestational period and through postpartum. So sometimes people reach out to me that are in other places of the world. And recently I've been supporting more miscarriages and miscarriage support. So I will hold space and guide the closing of the bones with their partner. And it's definitely different than in person, but I'm grateful that I can still be of service to people, even if they're not directly in front of me.
What is closing of the bones? And I love that you talk about it after miscarriage, not only about a live birth.
Yeah. The closing of the bones is one of these ceremonies that is honoring the rite of passage of life and of death and of any big transition in life, though it's typically and traditionally been offered after birth, so in postpartum, after the 40 days. Yeah. And it's this ceremony where we are holding space for the mother, for the birthing person, to bring any fragmented parts of themselves back into their body if they had trauma in their birth, to have a space to be held and be celebrated and be loved, and to honor the mother that they are, and to honor the person they were before birth, and to give this space of, just reclamation of like, you have not only birthed a child, but you are rebirthing yourself. And that is the closing of the bones in a nutshell for me. I could talk about it for hours.
Yeah, I would love to have another session where we just talk about that and the roots of it and the deep ancestral wisdom of it.
Yeah.
Because, here where we are at 6 weeks, typically in Western culture, you start to think about going back to work.
Yeah.
And you're filling out all those forms and figuring out childcare and it's my last interview talked about how, you are so celebrated when you're pregnant sometimes. And by the time you have your baby, like, we lose sight of that person. And what I love about the closing of the bone ceremony is that it's all about honoring and cherishing and seeing and putting that person literally like back together as they enter their new their new space.
Yeah. And something really important as well is recognizing that in the birth portal and after, the spirit realms are very open. It's like our body's fully open. So the closing of the bones is to come back. It's to close the pelvis. It's to realign the uterus. It's to energetically close so that we can come back into the world. Close in a good way. Close so that we're not allowing the world to penetrate us in a negative way and to have good boundaries.
It's protection.
It's protection, yeah.
It's protection, because how much like the pelvis and the cervix, the uterus, the vagina, they're vaults. They are vaults into our deepest, darkest crevices, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So the closing, I just picture this like beautiful door closing and the vault closing into safety, into sacredness. I love that. I love that on so many realms. Talk to me about justice and forgiveness. I know you've had some hard news over the course of the last few months.
Yeah, I shared this with you. One of the 3 people that were involved in the murder of my father was found after 28 years. And I saw him in court. And, this is a tragedy, though. When I saw him, it's not like I felt like this rage towards him or anguish or any of that. I was just like asking myself, what were the conditions of his life? What were the conditions of these men who at the time were children? They were 18 years old, who were hired by somebody to agree doing something like this. And it stirred up the question of what is justice? Because when someone does something and they just go into prison, it's like, is that justice? You know, this person's not even in jail yet, but like, what is justice beyond just taking another, you know, locking someone up? So to me, I'm still discovering what that means. It means this whole radical shift where we have to completely change the way that the world is operating for there to be true justice for humanity. Though I recognize that whether I feel anguish or anger or rage or resentment towards these people, subconsciously, I do, and it's impacting my life, and I have felt robbed because I long for my father. I long for somebody in my life that is not there. So making peace with time has been a big topic in my life. The 1.5 years that I've had with him is plenty. It's all that I was meant to have in this life with him. And so honoring time, that there is no lack of time. And forgiving because I deserve forgiveness. I deserve to live a life where I'm not holding onto this resentment and it's affecting my life, my body, my health. I want to be free and live my life free within myself and radically forgive them for their actions, despite not knowing their story, but knowing that there was something underneath that too, that we are connected to a similar struggle and a similar grief. And being in that courtroom, I was in the courtroom with family members that were in grief for their loved one, for their cousin. And so at the end of the day, it's like, are we against each other, or is there something underneath that's bringing us together, that is threading us together, when we can really look at it and when we can look at the situation and find commonality instead of like separation and distance and resentment and separation, which is, it's like so much of that is being reflected out into the world. And something that we also talked about earlier is just like, this experience is a microcosmic experience and struggle of what so much of the world is experiencing right now in the macrocosm of it all. And I recognize that I'm not alone. And in this journey, it's brought me closer in my, just feeling connected to the struggles of the world right now and finding strength within myself of like, looking for that strength within myself to continue forward, acknowledging the privileges that I have in my life, given what I've experienced, planting the seeds that I've harvested from this, and in hopes to plant a new garden.
Amen. I feel like I could sit in this room all day with you, Naya. I really do. And I'm so grateful to you for showing up today. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's not an easy story. And I know that my listeners are going to get so much healing and so much hope from the light that you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for the threads that brought us into the same circle.
It's amazing. And I can clearly see why I'm so attracted to your light. So thank you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thanks for listening to the Mama Atoosa podcast on the Industry Plant Podcast Network. Mama Atoosa is hosted by me, Atoosa Benji, and produced by Josh Stretton Carlson. Our theme music is composed by Mary Lalazarian. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving us a review and subscribing. See you next Tuesday.